Set in Ireland during the 1940s, the film introduces us to Rose McNulty, a woman who has just been sent to the Sligo Psychiatric Hospital for murdering her newborn baby. However, she repeats to herself that she did not commit this crime, all the while writing over the Bible, changing the name of the Book of Job to the Book of Rose. For 50 years, she filled the book with her own version of the events until she reached old age, although the blurred memories of her youth continue to haunt her. In one of her memories, we see her on a beach about to strike her baby with a stone. Right then, Dr. Stephen, an esteemed psychiatrist, happens to be walking along that same beach. At the request of the local church, he is on his way to evaluate Rose's mental state. It turns out the psychiatric hospital is about to be demolished to build a luxury hotel on its foundations, so they need to find out if Rose is fit to be released or if they must send her to another hospital for the rest of her days. When he meets her, Stephen calls her by her maiden name, although she only responds to McNulty, the last name of her late husband Michael, with whom she had a son. The doctor goes along with it and very gently informs her about the demolition of the psychiatric hospital, to which she replies that no one will take her out of there. She wants to stay until she decides to leave, as simple as that. Later, Dr. Hart, the hospital director, shows Stephen some recordings of the elderly woman. She often wanders the facility and seems to be seeing things. According to Hart, she views the psychiatric hospital as her own purgatory. As patients are transferred and construction workers invade the hospital, Rose complains that they are taking her things away. She even stops a garbage truck, insisting that her entire life, her diary, is inside. Stephen had already labeled her as mentally ill, but seeing her so desperate for her belongings, he glimpses some lucidity in her and decides to take on her case. This allows him to retrieve all her possessions that were about to be lost forever in the trash. Thanks to this, Rose begins to recount her youth through the passages of her Bible-turned-personal diary. In the 1940s, we see her as a charming young woman evacuated from Northern Ireland because of the Nazi bombings. Therefore, she has no choice but to move in with her Aunt Eleanor in her hometown, located in the Republic of Ireland. Contrary to the customs of that era, Eleanor often welcomes all kinds of people, Catholics and Protestants alike, into her cafe. This tolerance is passed on to Rose, who gets along with all the villagers, including Michael McNulty, a young man who sympathizes with the British Army. Through their interaction, Rose also catches the attention of McCabe, a villager who has known her since she was a child and was a friend of her deceased parents. Despite this, he warns that he will keep an eye on her, insisting she stay away from Protestants like Michael. Shortly after, Michael decides to enlist in the RAF, the British Royal Air Force, and before leaving for war, he asks Rose not to forget him. While she waits for her suitor's return, she spends her time swimming at the local beach, where she runs into Gaunt, a local who warns her that this is not a place for women. At first, Rose takes it lightly because he doesn't seem like a lifeguard, although he points out that women can only look into their husband's eyes. Offended by that remark, the young woman leaves in disgust. On her way home, she is intercepted by Gaunt, who, somewhat remorseful for his attitude, offers her a ride. On the road, she keeps asking about his profession, to which he replies that he listens to people's problems. Then he drops her off on the outskirts of town to avoid gossip among the villagers. Another day, Rose witnesses a fight between drunken neighbors that is broken up by the local church's priest, Gaunt. Who would have guessed that a man his age holds that position? Back in the present, the elderly Rose shows a drawing of Gaunt in her Bible, and judging by her expression, she doesn't have the best memories of him. While she sleeps, Stephen diligently reads her diary, filled with phrases about the long-awaited return of her son Michael. She firmly believes her son is still alive and will soon come looking for her. On the other hand, everything she wrote about Father G in the diary is genuine terror. He used to follow her everywhere and force her to interact with him. Because of that, rumors about a supposed romance begin to spread in town. And although Rose tries to defend herself, Eleanor threatens to fire her from the cafe if she sees her again with the priest. In her attempt to avoid him, the young woman catches the eye of Jack, a local. He tries to confess his love for her but is again sabotaged by the priest, leading to a fight between the two. In the midst of that, G complains that Rose is seducing everyone with her gaze, though he is also looking at her in the eyes. She labels him a priest who just wants to be a man, a dilemma she doesn't want to get involved in. Because of that scene, Rose is fired by her aunt, who sends her to live on an abandoned farm on the outskirts of town. After days of bitter loneliness, a military plane crashes in a nearby field. Immediately, the young woman rushes to the crash site, where she finds a pilot hanging from a tree by his parachute. Just before he suffocates, she manages to free him and discovers it's Michael, who has come back just as he promised, though not under the circumstances she hoped for. Right now, it's not about romance, but about hiding him from radical townspeople who won't be happy about a fellow countryman who fought for England. Unfortunately, McCabe's gang breaks into her farm, suspecting Michael is hiding there. McCabe even threatens to abuse her if she doesn't tell the truth, though Jack appears out of nowhere to stop him and chase his gang away. Once alone again, Rose can care for the badly wounded pilot until he fully recovers. Due to the horrors of war, this is not the same Michael as before. Now he's much more paranoid and feels that the Nazis could knock on the door at any moment. Determined to prevent that, he starts fixing his old motorcycle to return to the front, causing Rose great sadness. One day, while they are peacefully having breakfast, someone knocks on the door and the pilot immediately hides. Rose answers the door and finds Gaunt, who offers her a job as a housekeeper at his church, since he doesn't like the idea of her living alone. Wanting to get rid of him, she promises to consider his offer. One morning, Rose wakes up to the sound of the motorcycle, which means her great love has abandoned her. However, on the table, she finds a new vase, and upon stepping outside, she sees Michael fixing the house's roof. That night, he turns on the radio and invites her to dance. It's a romantic moment, although she can't help thinking of her mother, who went insane after the death of her father and was committed to a sanitarium, where she eventually died. Everything suggests she will suffer the same fate, since Michael is prepared to leave and gifts her his Medal of Valor, so she will always remember him. Unable to let him go, Rose kisses him, and they make love for the first time. As far as firsts go, Michael meets his next visitor, Gaunt, whom he wordlessly shuts out. The priest leaves, defeated. Michael then proposes marriage to Rose, who happily accepts, not caring that he doesn't have a ring. They make it official through the local Protestant minister, who marries them in a private ceremony. The newlyweds celebrate with a wonderful outing through the natural scenery of their area, especially the beach. However, upon returning home, Rose realizes there are intruders and begs Michael to flee. With no time for goodbyes, he speeds off on his motorcycle while McCabe's gang chases him. Having tipped off those thugs, Father Gaunt writes a condemning report on Rose's mental health, stating that she suffers from nymphomania. With her aunt's permission, she is locked away in a local psychiatric hospital. In this new gloomy home, the young woman declares a hunger strike, so they restrain her to a bed to force-feed her. In response, she spits at the nurse, and they punish her with insulin shock therapy. As a result, Rose starts eating without complaint and only stops when she sees an airplane outside the window, hoping it is Michael. One day, she gets an unpleasant visit from Father Gaunt, who tells her that her aunt won't sign the release, but the situation would be different if she were married. As soon as she hears this, Rose reveals she is pregnant, shattering the man's illusions. Later, she is transferred to an institution for unmarried women, where she asks a pregnant fellow inmate about her child's future. The inmate replies that she will take the only option available, giving the child up for adoption, since women in her situation cannot keep their babies. When she is close to giving birth, Rose decides to leave the institution and head to her favorite beach, with Father Gaunt hot on her heels. In a boat, she swims to a cave-like spot where she manages to give birth. Her joy ends when she hears the priest shouting, so she picks up a stone and starts striking the umbilical cord to cut it. From his viewpoint, the sergeant accompanying Gaunt states she is killing her child. By the time the sergeant reaches her, he finds her half-conscious and with no sign of the baby. Hearing this part of the story, Stephen feels a key piece is missing, but the elderly Rose gets lost in her thoughts. The only thing she says with certainty is that she didn't harm her precious son, Michael's gift to her. According to her, everything seen with love is real, while the rest is just smoke. Back in the past, we see Rose at the sanitarium being told her son has died, which breaks her heart. Since they believe she was to blame, they subject her to electroshock therapy. If that wasn't enough, Gaunt informs her that the local authorities plan to keep her locked up with straps. As a result, she is thrown into a cell where she begins to write down her experiences, tragedies, and secrets in the Bible. She remains convinced that Michael survived the war, and she is sure he will reappear in her life sooner or later. This brings us back to the present, when Stephen, trying to fill in the blanks, realizes that the dates in Rose's writings indicate her son was born in the spring, while the official hospital report claims it was May 1st. Coincidentally, that is Stephen's birthday. He immediately goes to his late parents' house, which is about to be sold. Among the boxes of memories, he finds a letter written by them to their son. After reading it, the man removes the for sale sign and returns to the psychiatric hospital, where they threaten to forcibly evict Rose. Fortunately, Stephen arrives just in time to give her the letter, which reveals that Father Gaunt took her baby on the beach along with his father's medal. Decades later, tormented by his sins, the priest told Stephen's adoptive parents the truth. Although they never managed to tell him themselves, this letter finally reveals that Stephen has always been Rose's son. With the same gentleness Michael once showed, Stephen offers his hand to take her home.
If you want interesting movie recaps, like, share, and subscribe to follow us for more movie recaps.